Regan. And again, welcome to all the ADA members. Today's webinar is really dedicated to nurturing the mental well-being in the workplace. We're entering arguably a period of time that is going to be the most volatile in our history in the collegiate space. And that comes freshly out of a pandemic where administrators were on the front lines of keeping things going, to provide an experience, to make tough decisions, and to keep the doors open. What we're hearing formally and informally is that people are tired. Administrators never really got the chance to take a breath coming out of the pandemic, and the next crisis is around us. So as we gather here today, we embark on a crucial conversation guided by Coach Koss. We aim to explore some practical strategies, delve into fostering these supportive environments, and empower professionals with tools to navigate challenging decisions while prioritizing our mental health. We believe today's conversation will help many of us, so let's get started. We'll turn it over to Coach Koss. And Coach, I'll start just by asking you a general opening question here. How can administrators create an open and supportive culture regarding mental health and the fatigue struggles within the workplace?
Yeah, I'm excited to work with all of you. I love my time working with NAIA schools, and most of my college coaching life was with the NAIA. And I think the reason that my heart still stays with it is that everybody's so focused on the overall well-being of student athletes. And that's a genuine focus. And so I'm seeing people around me. I have a lot of athletic director friends, and I feel that we all check on each other a lot, because as bosses, very rarely are you guys the ones that are being checked in on. And we'll kind of get to that, how you take care of yourselves towards the end of the presentation. One of the things that I have seen working through programs is getting the buy-in from your coaches. And this can take some time. I think we feel that we should have one conversation and that's that. And everybody's going to be kumbaya and jump into it. But what I've seen is it usually takes some people, I would say the stubborn coaches, it can take up to almost 18 months. But a lot of it is them understanding how this is going to make their teams more successful and their quality of life better. So much of my last year was sitting with leaders saying, how do we keep you doing your job? Because we see high turnover rate in all parts of sports. We see it in most leadership ministry. Everybody is trying to jump ship because they don't have the bandwidth anymore after coming out of the pandemic. And all the major changes in sports that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years that everybody's facing as the leader of this. So and so talking about all these B's, so like, how do you get this direct messaging? And one of them is be seen. And I always say, like, I've had administrators that were around all the time, and I've had administrators that were never around. And I understand the schedule. I was just an assistant AD, but I did compliance and coaching. So I had like 3 full-time jobs, which most of you feel like you do or do. And so a lot of it is how do you put this as a priority? But the thing is kids want to know that you're there, and coaches want to know that you're there, not only when something happens bad, right? So you don't want to be only the police that show up when things are awful. So if it's a matter of, hey, I'm just going to walk by practice on the way to a meeting, I'm going to leave 10 minutes early so I can, pop in, go see coach, go chat with the kids, those type of things. That's going to put you as this culture is truly a community, because kids will have those conversations. Well, the AD only shows up when something bad happens, or we're getting in trouble, or they want us to fundraise, right? You want them to understand that you're there no matter what, right? And so, it's fun to go to games and see kids interact with their ADs. And that is, I think, is different about the NAI. That happens most often, but you guys also have so much on your plate. So it's, how do you take 10 minutes to stop at a practice, right? Even if it's like, yeah, the football coach wants me all the time, but I need to stop in at swimming because they need to see me just as much as football, and so does golf and basketball, right? And the other thing too is that is one of the reasons that's one of the things that fuels us to do what we do. I'm really good friends with he runs a theater company, and he decided to direct a show. And I go, have you lost your mind? You don't have time for that. He goes, I have to. He goes, I have to remind myself every day why I do what I do, because he goes, I can't sit in the office all the time, right? And so that's really important. The other thing is being empathetic, right? Because some of you are coaching really young coaches that are trying to learn all this, and some of you are coaching really old coaches that do not understand our student athletes at this time, right? And so being empathetic with them and be like, hey, it's difficult being a young coach. How do we get you on track? Instead of, If you don't get your crap together, you're gone, which once again, I know that's not NAIA life. You know, we'll also have older coaches that dig in their heels, and it's like, hey, I know this is difficult to be managing a whole new generation of student athletes. What can we do to help you, you know, take some of the load off of you, right? And that doesn't mean you're, you know, they'll say, well, give me more money. No, that's not what you're saying. It's how do we help you connect with your students, right? Because I get that all the time. I don't know how to connect with my student athletes. So it's, we're going to teach you, right? And so much of coach, it's how do you have empathetic conversations, right? How do you coaches also hold kids accountable? You know, some of the best advice I ever got was working daycare in college was you got to be able to kick them in the butt and hug them afterwards, right? And I've seen that in a lot of coaches that once they step on the field, like the expectation is high. Once they step off, they're just their kids and love gets poured into them, right? And so that's the same thing as admins. You know, there are coaches that probably drive you bonkers. Like we all have them, right? And it's how do we go connect and understand where they're coming from, you know? And so for me, honestly, sorry, all you basketball folk, but I never understood basketball coaches. I never got it. I am learning. My next door neighbor at school is a basketball coach, so I'm embracing my roommates. You know, Regan and I are friends, so I'll, you know, she has a little bit of basketballism still left in her that I'm going to shake out, but I was always so intimidated almost by basketball because you guys can never just chill in the gym. Like it's physically impossible for a basketball coach to chill in the gym. So I had to learn where he was coming from. And to be honest, I probably got closest to our basketball coach. He actually had lost a newborn the day before their due date. And I saw this whole different side of him. And I see that now in coaches when they're just who they are. So get to know your coaches on a level that's more than X's and O's, right? Even if it's just 10-minute check-ins. Hey, I'm just checking in to see how things are going on in your life. I don't care about fundraising. I don't care about winning or losing. I just want to know how you are, right? That's very, very important. Be proactive. And that's been kind of the messaging with my student athletes this year is, guys, we can't keep waiting to get into crisis mode, right? We cannot be in crisis mode all the time. And so implementing these best practices now is going to save you a lot of time in the end. Because I'm working with an organization that they had 3 suicides in 2 years. 2 of them were coaches. One was a high school football player out of Lake Oswego. And for you guys, I have no idea where Lake Oswego is. That's where the Portland Trailblazers live. So that is like mega money in the state of Oregon. And so they've gotten to a point that we're creating mental health systems from 3rd grade on. So we don't get to crisis. We don't want to get those phone calls. It's not because we don't want to deal with them. We want our kids to not get to that point. And even at the school where my office is, we teach classes every semester that are based on relationships and time management. And I say, why am I doing this? They're like, because you don't want us to get to needing a counselor. I go, exactly. Like, I don't want to be talking about anxiety, depression. I want to be talking about skill sets to make you a better person, which also keeps you performing better, right? Because so many of these kids are super duper burnt out and they have no skills because we all know they're not coming from home. And so that's one of the hard things about college now is it used to be, oh, they're prepared to come to college. They're not prepared to come to college now. And so it's almost like we have to bridge this extra adolescence that is coming into our universities and our colleges, right? And so giving them those skill sets has made a big difference. I think overall, just in welfare departments, but also success rates. I know when we started a lot of this stuff at Concordia many years ago, I think we were probably the first person to start doing this. We just did it out of necessity, not because we were being like, you know, cutting edge. And I saw discipline issues go down. I saw our teams perform better. I saw less kids struggling with academics and less kids transferring. I would walk through the athletic department and go, oh my gosh, things are so much calmer because there was proactive, not reactive. The other thing is being consistent. And this is what your coaches probably need to understand the most is kids really struggle when a different person shows up all the time. And that's the same for coaches. I was kind of compared to being a child of an addict, right? When you never know which parent's going to walk in the door, that leads to a lot of anxiety. So if you're pretty much the same wherever you're at, that's going to be important. Now, that doesn't mean you don't get to have a personality, okay? Because then they don't want that either. But they want to know that, hey, this is how Nick's going to deal with this, or this is how Reagan's going to deal with this, because they want to be consistent and know what to expect. Kids do not like surprises anymore. They want to understand why we're doing what we're doing. And to be honest, I don't think coaches are really that different. You know, coaches think that they should be told everything. And I would say, no, they don't need to know everything. But man, they assume and start spreading rumors just as much as athletes do. Sometimes worse, I think. So it's important to be consistent and transparent to the best of your ability, right? Be
Coach,
the
on that,
model. And
real
yeah,
quick
go
on
ahead.
that point, Coach, if I could just jump in real quick, when you're getting to the be the model component,
Yeah,
could you maybe break down in detail some like practical strategies administrators can adopt on their daily routines to be that model, enhance their own mental wellness? Because I think one of the things that and this is, and we talked about in our prep, was just like you were seeing so much among our administrators that they just are tired. And so
absolutely.
what are some strategies that they might be able to take away with that?
So I say this all the time, and Nick, you were the first one to look at me through Zoom, like, shut up, cause like we can't do that. And I just guilt my AD friends now all the time. I'm like, Regan, I've invited her to my cabin for since I bought it, and I still can't get her here. I'm waiting for Crystal at Irvine, a D2 school. She's never been there. We've been friends since 14 years. And I said to Nick, I go, you need to go on vacation. And he just looks at me, he's like, no, no, I can't. Here's the thing. I was exactly the same. I was a workaholic. I don't know what maternity leave is. I was answering emails in the hospital. My second AD goes, how long till we can talk to you? I go, 48 hours. He goes, we'll give you a week. I'm like, awesome. Let's do that. The thing is I was burning out. And to be honest, like I was getting sicker a lot more and I couldn't perform the best for my crew, right? My team, all the other student athletes. And I had to start realizing if I take a week off, how is that going to refuel me to be better at my job? And we need to think about that because I have to remind myself all the time. So like after Christmas, I go away for a week because all the stories that I've heard for the last semester have like, just like, it's like being in a car crusher and you can only handle it so much. And so I think I've got to go take this time to refuel to be ready for the next semester. Okay. So that's why I put these pictures up there. My kids are like, why are you putting those? I go, those are my 3 favorite places in the world. Right. Oxbow Bend, Broadway, and San Diego Zoo. So even if it's I have to take 3 or 4 days away, the thing is, you guys are all freaking answering your phones all the time. I had to tell one of my friends, she goes, you can text me all between rides at Disney. I go, shut up, I'll talk to you when you get back. That's why I'm glad that some of you guys are out of bounds when you ski or fish because nobody can get to you. And that's really important. So I'm making Nick happy. And we are talking about the things you can do every day. And, don't, and it's funny because my kids were really upset or bugged with me that I put Owl's legs on there. They've been waiting for, I'm like, guys, I put Owl's legs on this presentation. There's no relevance of Owl's legs. And I go, yes, it is. So this is why. So things that you can do that take like a half an hour, maybe an hour. Okay. And some of them are once a week. Walk across your campus. Just walk across your campus. Go to outside the athletic department. Because I love that. Like usually when I'm on campus, I'm all over the place and I get to see campuses and campuses now that I've been back to, like I just love to walk across campus and see everything that's going on. And it's kind of like getting to look at your domain, almost like I create this, right? And it also fuels you of, I work so hard. Why do I work so hard? And you see all the things that you're a part of when you walk across your campus, right? If it's under construction, just take it as we're moving forward, not freaking, what is this, stadium ever going to get done? Because I know you have to have those conversations too. But 20 minutes, walk across campus, right? I would say go hit ground balls. Our associate provost oversaw our athletic director, and I knew when days were bad. He's like, I'm coming to hit ground balls today. I'm like, you got it, Glenn. I will see you at practice, right? And because for him, he just needed to be a part of it and physically get active. And that's the other thing, 30 minutes. A lot of our coaches used to play hoops at lunch. The only bad thing about that is they're all old and they kept tearing like their Achilles, the old man's injury, but they would go play for half an hour. They'd go do something, work out for half an hour. I always laugh in Park City. They literally have ski lifts through down like the old town of Park City. Why? Because people ski on their lunch break, right? And so that's the thing is we think, no, we don't have time to eat. First thing, you better be eating, okay? The 2 number 1, yeah, I know, Regan, I'm the same way. My husband handed me a bag of chicken today, and I was like, here you go. Well, okay. But here's the thing, and I say this to our athletes, food and sleep are the most important components of mental wellness, and I'm guessing you're like athletes, and you're not great at either of them because we don't have time, or there's too much on our mind, or our body physically hurts, or all the things. That's why I text with ADs at night because you're the only yahoos that are still up at midnight and you still are going to be up for a couple of hours, right? So those are things that are important. Now, this next one, you're going to think, I'm not bringing my dog to freaking work, okay? Well, it doesn't have to be every day, but if you have a day that's more chill, I know for me, I have 2 golden retrievers and a weird mix. But especially during COVID, Spencer came with me every day, my biggest golden retriever. And honestly, the days he wasn't there was really hard because it's like he would consume a lot of the stuff. He was exhausted at the end of the day, but just being able to take my breaks and be like, I'm going to go pet my dog for 2 minutes. Right. So it may be like, if your coach has a dog, I know like College of Idaho's football department, everybody freaks and brings their dog. So, it's even like, yep, I know that so-and-so's dogs, I'm going to go pet that dog. There's all tons of research about how pets bring, put good chemicals in our brain, right? Have a go-to person. And I always laugh that everybody needs somebody to text during meetings because you're sitting through meetings saying, this should be an email. This is stupid. Why are we having it, right? One of my buddies texted me and I go, she goes, guess who's leading this meeting? I go, well, I hope it's not freaking you because you shouldn't be texting me. And she's like, no, it's so-and-so. So I'm the texting person for several administrators. If you need my number, send it to me. You can talk crap about your meetings or send pictures or whatever, because having that release in the middle of the day of just like, I just need to talk to somebody outside of this department for a second is important.
Coach, can I follow up on that real quick? Because and I'll just use a story quick. My staff told me at one point, our staff, that that I shield them from bad news because I don't want them to kind of deal with what I'm dealing with at times, right?
Yeah.
So how do you have that go-to person, which we may be dealing with some real stuff, and then also not share with them too much that you're now making them feel bad too? Like what are the boundaries on having that go-to person?
That's a really good question because we're running into that with athletes. And I literally, so I was joking that we had a kid faint. I work at a Catholic school, so I was talking at mass. And one of the athletes afterwards, we were talking about being insecure and breaking trust. And he comes up to me, and this is a freshman kid that I love to pieces. And he goes, Kaz, I think sometimes we break people's trust because we can't handle everything they told us. So we need to go tell somebody else. And I was sitting there, I go, Travin, like that's like the truest thing. We can only handle so much of a load. So to be honest, when I say your go-to person, not somebody in your staff, not somebody in your department, right? And that's the thing. It's like, I know my people, I will carry all their stuff because they're going to also take all my craziness. And we also have a sense of humor about it. And we'll kind of get to the counselor part because that's a really important thing because we can't carry so much that we're overflowing with stuff. We can't, right? And we'll get to that when it comes to the counseling part of it. And even kind of the last two things, because that is probably the biggest thing, Nick. How do we hand some of this stuff over, right?
Yeah.
So when I talk about like visualization and funny videos, like I always think about things that like put the chemicals in your brain. So some of you may think, going to Mexico for an all-inclusive sounds really relaxing. That is my idea of a nightmare. So for me, visualizing would be like, I would go to New York, or I would visualize, for me, it's always animals because those are my happy chemicals, right? So like when I visualize, I literally keep a picture of my phone, and I do this the same with our athletes because all of them are losing sleep because there's so many hamsters going on. I would say, guys, pick one image and like mentally kind of break it down. Like when I look at that dog that's sitting there in the hammock, I think of like smell of the grass, like it's all your senses, the smell of the grass, what the dog would feel like how fluffy he is. And I know this seems really generic and juvenile, but what it's doing is taking your brain from focusing on everything that's happened that day and everything that you have to do tomorrow and just keeps you present and lets you fall asleep easier. Okay. Because I remember waking up in the middle of the night at like 26 years old going, water sucks. And I'm like, you're losing sleep over Navy socks. But that was a constant as a young coach, right? Now, when I go to sleep, I literally listen to the news, which I know is messed up. But it's just become white noise. I usually I'm not worried about what comes next during the day because that sleep, I don't have control over that. And I know for me, like last night, I go, honey, it is 12:30 and I have to talk tomorrow. I cannot stay up any later. So I'm always like, I have to sleep to prepare for the next day. And that's the best version of you that you're going to get. So going to sleep is actually going to heal, recover, and repair your brain more than staying up and working more. So when we sleep is actually when all of the stuff gets stuck into our memory. So when kids pull all-nighters, they cram and they dump, that's because nothing gets locked in their memory, okay? So sleep for you guys, you think you don't have time, you're going to perform at a lower level because you don't sleep, so it's going to take more time to do projects. Does that make sense? So it could take you 2 hours to do a presentation because you're not rested, or it can take 1 hour and you get the extra hour of sleep, right? And so you have to think that getting more sleep is actually going to make things simpler on the back end. So is eating. Okay. Remember, we tell our athletes, got to fuel our systems. If your brain is not 95% at nourishment, you cannot think to the ultimate capacity. And you all need to be like thinking at a level above capacity, right? So that's the thing is you're taking time to eat and sleep. Really, that's as important as any other training thing we do for our student athletes. It's as important to sleep as to go to the training room, to go to the weights. Same thing for you guys. Okay. You are no different. It's high performers no matter what they look like, right? Funny videos, because by golly, they're awesome and they're fun to send other people, and they do put good chemicals. So I know, like, when I talk about serious things with kids, this picture always comes out, the owls with legs, or owls legs, because it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And so for me, I will watch videos that just, you can literally feel the serotonin just coming in, right? So that might be, I'm taking 2 minutes. My family's always like, oh, you got bored at work, or you were overloaded, because I start sending them videos, right? So, you don't go down the rabbit hole, but it's like, I need something that makes me physically feel good, right? So it could be like, yep, I'm going to take 10 minutes to read a book. And all y'all are always reading things to make you better all the time. None of you do things that don't make you better, because most of you probably go home and watch sports, which you think doesn't make you do better, but it keeps you up on the culture of sports. So I would encourage you, take even 10 minutes a day and do something that's not sport related or improving yourself. Okay. Self-help can only go so far, right? And it actually, to be honest, it's like exercising all the time. That's what it's like. So if you're improving yourself all the time, you might as well go be one of those super marathon guys. Okay. Which they're all crazy. The other thing too, and I know I'm kind of, oh, where do you go? I'm kind of, I know that literally half of the schools in the NAI are public and half of them are private and half of them are faith-based and half of them are not. And of course it's going to buffer. But anyway, even paying attention to your faith relationship is really important, right? The topic I literally was just talking with our student athletes was about insecurity, and not saying that, I mean, all of us have our insecurities, but a lot of it was talking about, we get so wrapped up on all of the external things, we put little time into the things that are the core of our foundations. And our athletes do the same, and our coaches are probably the worst, right? So hold on. So that being said, there we go, Regan. If it's a few minutes and you're like, I'm just going to meditate, or I'm just going to pray, or I'm going to do this, those foundational things are really important. And so that's when I talk about being the model. We're actually going to a 4-day school week here at Seton, which I never saw coming, because this is one of the highest academic schools in the state of Washington, and these kids are involved in so much extracurricular. So they're like, we want them to have more time to recover and meal prep and all that stuff. Now, you guys don't have all of that, but I know for me, when I knew I needed to change my life is when my daughter drew a family picture of me in bed with a laptop. Ooh. So I have chronic pain. And so I've been, especially when they're younger, I was in bed a lot because I, was always working so much and my pain level was high. And I looked at it and I go, I've got to change my life, because I don't want my kids to look at me as I'm just the sick mom that works all the time, right? And so that's even sitting down with your staff going, we're going to prioritize these things. These things are important. And those sacrifices are actually going to make you perform better. I know it seems that we all don't want to fall off the wagon. I know Concordia, nobody wanted to be the first loser. So we were like, no, we're just going to grind. But what I'm seeing now is more grind is causing kids and people to numb out, to disassociate, to turn to substances, and a higher rate of suicide. I work with a program that I'm like, oh my gosh, these kids are so numb, because if they're not grinding, they're failing. That's the mentality. And it makes me very nervous, right? And that's the thing is rest and recovery, repeat this, rest and recovery is just as important as training. Rest and recovery is just as important as raising the extra dollar, because you're going to be in better shape to raise $10 versus $1, right? So you need to think about it that way. Why is counseling important? And yes, of course, I'm going to get on my soapbox. I'm a counselor, but I also see a counselor. And I actually went back to one because honestly, my load of everybody else was so heavy. And this is what you're talking about, Nick. Like, thing with me is my friends, I have my inner circle that if they want to ask me to be a counselor for them, you got it. I have all these strangers that come out of the wood, not strangers, but acquaintances that come out of the woodwork and want to ask me questions, because really they want me to be their therapist for free. And it's really exhausting, because at the end of the day, I don't want to, I literally told somebody, I'm not going to diagnose your neighbor's kid. Like, I literally had that conversation, right? And so for me, I need somebody that can carry the load, right? And so I knew for me, like, I physically wasn't feeling good. Mentally, it's been a really rough last month, which usually the winter months are harder mental health wise. So I know usually around Christmas, I'm pretty beat up. So I went to see somebody and I said, this is what's going on. And she goes, well, you're kind of facing performance burnout. And I was like, okay. But what that means is we perform at a high level all the time, and it never shuts off, right? I was joking with Regan and Nick when I did the meeting before this, and Nick and I were like, talking crap via Zoom about Regan, and Regan's literally talking to somebody, asking her about football and fundraising, and then she jumps on and flips a switch and turns into messing around with us.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, those days when you have to be on all the time. You got to remember, coaches are on 24/7. One of the busiest recruiting days of the year is Christmas. Why? Because if they don't text a recruiter on Christmas, boy, howdy. My in-laws used to give me so much crap. They're like, you're not even focused. It's Christmas. I'm like, yeah, but my shortstop is, I got to talk to her. I drove through a blizzard during Christmas break to get a letter of intent signed by my shortstop. And her day of backing out was Christmas Day. So at 11:59 p.m., I looked at my clock and I go, got her. And I went to bed. That was Christmas.
Yeah.
Right.
So Coach, on that front, we're getting into, dealing with things and people and such. So let's talk about making difficult decisions.
Yeah.
The ADs in this room and others that have had to make those decisions to impact others' lives, like letting someone go. That could be super emotionally challenging. So how can professionals in our industry cope with these decisions, that maybe letting someone go, while maintaining the balance of a perspective as a leader, that you're doing it for the right reasons?
Yeah. Um, I say this to my kids a lot. I can only be awesome at so many things, right? When you're little, you think your kids think you can fix everything, and then they bring you a torn sticker. You can't fix a torn sticker. Like, I can fix anything but a torn sticker. And even now, when they're like, "Hey, mom, could you do this?" I'm like, "Dude, I can only be so amazing at so many things." And that's the thing about the NAI. Like, you guys are so amazing at so many things. Like, if I had a coach write her job description, and she wrote it, and that's a whole long story, but I go, "How do you feel about your job description?" She goes, "Resentful." I go, "Yeah." I said, "I'm guessing you do," because it was 3 jobs, right? And so we sat and looked at that, and then we started looking at, how do we manage that? How do we compartmentalize some stuff? How do we say no to some things? And I know no does not come into a AD's vocabulary, but you have to start picking and choosing some things. And like, when it comes to the emotional tolls, I was trying to explain, the emotional toll of a Title IX situation, right? And I actually just went through one. My scenario was, it was my day that I see clients at home. I got a text message that I needed to be on campus. One of my students went out to lunch with her best friend, who was a guy that raped her at lunch, and she was in my office in 20 minutes. So I'm sitting across this kid who I know very well. She's one of my clients, love her to death. And we are putting out fires in real time. And, everything's happening, and it's happening in the middle of school day. And we're having to manage all that. And the other thing about it all is not enough physical evidence, which happens in most Title IX cases. So she left school, he's back. And I haven't seen him yet, and I don't really know how I'm going to wrap my head around that. You guys deal with that all the time. Title IX cases usually don't end up well. And most of the time, 2 kids' lives are ruined, and they both leave, right? And so sometimes I have to remind myself of those statistics to be able to consume it, because I think we always feel we fail our kids. And that's the thing is ADs, you guys have all been trained, and you guys all do your best to serve them. And that's all we can do. And I know that sounds horrible. That's the only way I do my job. Because at the end of the day, I have to release my clients back to the wild, and they have to start making choices for themselves, right? And that's really, really difficult. And I say the same with coaches. I talk a lot about social consequences, and coaches do things that get them fired. Okay. In most cases, sometimes, there's just other stories. But the other thing too is, if you are choosing what's best for your program, that's what has to happen. We get attached to our people because we love them. And that's true. Like, as I say, I love the staff I'm with now. I miss them when on the weekends. But the program is bigger than anything. And I always say that nobody's bigger than the program, not even the head coach. I don't care if it's John Wooden, Patty Gasso, or Mark Few. I don't care. They're all going to retire. The program will still exist. And as an AD, it is the job to serve the program, right? And the problem is we struggle with, well, we want to make parents happy. No, we serve the program. Well, we don't want this coach. Well, no, we serve the program, and you make your decisions based off of that. And yes, it's hard to let people go, right? I've seen coaches go. One of my closest friends when I was coaching, and we're still friends now, I was one of the people that said we needed to fire him. Love him to pieces, not best for the program. And if I had to make that decision all over again, make the same decision, because mine is to the program. Because you guys all have these kids that want coach to get fired, and you all know that they're really the best thing for these kids. We've all sat across from it, right? You know, I just watched a local high school fire a coach because 2 kids that didn't get to place, parents complained, and they did it. They fired him. And who was the follow-up? A guy that couldn't pass a background check. What? Right? So that's the thing is nobody can own the decision. You've got to make the decision for the program. And here's the thing is, those crisis investigations, those letting people down, or not letting people down, but letting people go, guys, grief comes with that. It's like getting divorced.
So kind of what you're saying is like, you got to allow yourself to feel that emotion in a
Yes.
sense, and
Yeah.
you know, stop trying to be tough about it, and
Yeah.
you know, just
And that's
like,
why
it's okay.
having
It's
people
okay to be
outside,
affected.
yeah. And that's why having people on the outside, having a counselor, having another administrator that you talk to is really important. Because like right now, there's been a lot of death of not my clients. My clients have lost a lot of people in their early 20s. So losses that shouldn't have happened. And these kids are struggling. Like one of my kids hasn't been to school in a month. And the mom's just like, how do I fix it? I'm like, he just lost his dad and he found him in the house. He's not going to bounce back in a month. Like, come on, they're kids and there's grief. You know, I had talked to a coach that had lost her job. He said it took her a year to recover. And I know for me, when I lost my job, it was a while. When Concordia shut down, the ripple effect that hurt the people that got let go, that did not just bounce back. You are all humans, and it is grief. As I say, it's just like getting divorced, right? You know, as I work with a lot of chronic pain and injury, and I had a client, and I said, well, it's kind of like you died, because he went from a very active guy to he could barely walk. And he goes, it's kind of like you died. He goes, no, I didn't. And 6 months later, he goes, remember how you said I died? I go, yeah. And he goes, that's kind of true. I said, yeah, dude, you're not going to be the same person. And guys, when those major events happen, you're not the same person.
And
You know,
Coach,
I sat with Cole. Yeah.
sorry, and kind of following up on that a little bit, like, so visualize this. I mean, you've made that decision, you know, was the right decision, was best for the program. A few days later, you have a staff meeting, and you're obviously not going to address that situation, but you know that there's, you know, a third of that room that had, or half of that room that has a really good relationship with that coach. So how do you navigate that, knowing that you're going into that setting? You've got a portion of that room that just does not believe you made the right decision. So what steps do you take to kind of protect yourself on that from a mental side of things, but also, you know, make sure that the staff are feeling like we're still going in the right direction as a department?
Well, and I think that's where the proactive stuff comes in that forum too, Nick, is, you know, there are departments that they don't trust the AD to make those decisions, and they're second guessing everything. We've seen coaches like that. We've seen departments like that. So setting the foundation with people earlier, saying my job here is to serve the best of each program and have a healthy department. That is what I'm chasing. And that's where we become the model. So they're going to look at it and go, Nick's never made a decision that was reckless. We need to trust him, right? And the other thing is and I always am very upfront of, hey, guys, these are things that can't be fully disclosed. I can't disclose why the decision was made. I made the decision because after going through all of the steps of making this decision, we made it to serve the best of the program. And you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to make everybody happy. They're freaking coaches. That's impossible, right? You could give them $10,000 and they'll say, can I have 15? Right? So that's the thing is trying to make your coaches happy. That can't be the quest. Making your department healthy and your programs healthy, that's what your quest is, right? Because you're going to bring in some staff member that thinks that they should be in the middle of everything. And then you're going to have another staff member that hopes that you never tell them a thing. Right. And so knowing that there's going to be those outliers, you can't always keep the outliers happy. Right. I treat it as the 10-80-10 rule. And I learned this very early when I started speaking. 10% are going to think you're awesome no matter what you say. 10% are going to think you suck no matter what you say. And so you're captivating the 80%. Right. And I literally said that to my principal. Goes, well, I wanted 100% on board. I go, well, you're delusional. And he looks at me. I go, buddy, you're bringing an affordable school week with a bunch of overhyped, educated parents. I go, you're going to piss somebody off today. And I said, you're going for the 80%, right? Guys, you're writing lineups just like coaches. Once a lineup comes out, somebody's going to be pissed. And you just have to accept you guys are going to piss somebody off every day. And it's because you care about your department and you can't think of the individuals. You just can't. And that sucks because you love the individual, but you're not managing the individual. You're running a department.
And we have about 10 minutes left here, so we'll go over to some questions here in a second. I have just kind of one final follow-up on that for you, Coach. So any of you that have questions, Regan and Nick are monitoring the chat. And also I think you can jump in at that point as well. Let's just talk about that again, that situation where you're dealing with maybe a personnel situation. And, we all have our process that we need to go to. I was told by one of my mentors, if you're going through the process through you're letting someone go, they should never be surprised by it unless they did something super stupid. And even then they shouldn't be surprised either.
Yes.
But even through that process could be 6 months, a year, and that can be very taxing as well, because you're having a very difficult conversation with someone and that you might have had a good relationship with before, and then they're just weird around you from that point forward. So talk to us about handling the weirdness, and how to make sure that doesn't impact you, the administrator, as from a mental standpoint.
Yeah. And this is kind of where I think that the mentorship role needs to come into play, right? It's funny because I was looking at one of my the slide that I showed you. So this is the head basketball coach at Utah, okay, and this is his AD. And I'm sitting here. I mean, I've been in that arena, many a times, and I'm sitting here going, the AD is still walking out with coach at the end of a basketball game, just chatting, and I was like, even at that level, those conversations still go on, right? And so it's the constant mentorship, right? And so if they're failing, it's not you're in trouble and you're bad, just like raising children. They don't want to be like, oh, you're bad, I slapped your hand. It's, hey, these are the things that I'm seeing that can help you improve. I'm here to help you through that, right? Instead of, well, you're bad and you just need to go work on your behavioral plan or your coaching plan and then come back to me, right? And as I say, it doesn't have to be hour-long sessions. It could be, I'm just checking in. Hey, let's go grab lunch. Let's grab coffee. You walk by their office and just say, hey, I'm just checking in. How did practice go? Were you able to implement the things we talked about? Well, yeah, and this is how it happened. Okay, well, that's awesome that you tried that. And sometimes things fail, right? But it's the constant check-in and communication. So they're not like, oh, you only show up when things are bad, right? Because here's the thing is you guys know that you'll go through coaching plans. Some people are not meant to be head coaches. Not all, some people are meant to be assistants, even though most assistants think they're born to be head coaches. That's not necessarily the truth, right? So even if you let them go, your goal is to prepare them for whatever comes next, right?
Awesome.
It may not be coaching. It may be, business. It may be a million things, but I want to still pour into them so they can be great at whatever the next thing comes. And they know I've got their back, even if it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, we put everything into each other. Coaching's maybe just not your fit.
Yeah. Awesome.
Right. So they want to know that you're still rooting for them.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Let's open it up to questions. And I think that last point, very important. You still got to show up. You still got to, you got to act like almost nothing's wrong, even though you had a tough conversation. So,
well,
questions.
and that's what I teach coaches about athletes. And we have to be the bigger picture or the bigger person. Because I laugh because parents will man, I'm breaking things everywhere. Because parents will come to me and say, well, they don't talk to me about it. They don't come to me and ask me how I'm doing. And I kind of want to laugh at parents and say, they're 14. You're an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to kind of, and I don't want to say we're treating our coaches like 14, but we also need to be part of their guidance. Most of us have coached, and we see the world of sport in a different way. We see all of it. They see their tunnel vision view. So how do we help them open that up? Right.
Yeah.
And how do we also be the one that leads the way? So we're not the scary person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll open it up in our last few minutes here. Got about 5 to 7 minutes to any questions that anyone has for Coach here.
Don't be like athletes or like, dude, I got this cause. That was one of my best moments of my job is when I walked into College of Idaho men's basketball for the very first time. And they were super tight, and I love those boys so much. And it's not because they win; it's because they talk about their feelings and Legos. So I love those boys a lot. But they're like, Coach, we're good. I did the same thing to football. They're like, Coach, we're good. I go, so what are we not good at? It sounds like you're good at everything. Well, we should be beating Carroll every time. And then they're like, oh crap, and they started talking about stuff, right? The stuff that they needed to learn more about.
So any
Hey,
questions? Yeah,
yeah,
go
hey,
ahead,
Kyle,
Regan.
talk about, I mean, I know one of the best pieces of advice I got was from Corey Anderson, which I'll, from Bushnell. Corey, you're welcome for the shout out. As a young AD, was to have one-on-ones with my coaches, right? So just like we talked about earlier, like it's not the, oh, why is she here moment, right? But I really try and make that about their time to tell me what's going on with them. But talk a little bit about how you know, just like we tell athletes, the hardest thing to do is walk through the door. How do we encourage the coaches to walk through our door when we've
Don't
got
make
the
them
hard
walk through your
times?
door. Don't make you walk through their door. This is why. One of the best moments with my AD, and I had two really great ADs, and one that I will share a fun story at some point. But my first two ADs were great men, great people. And halfway through my career, the AD's office moved into a house down the street. I stayed in the weight room because he's like, you can't move with us. You got to make sure the shenanigans around here. So he walked into my office one day, and just that he chose to walk the block to see me, made me go, it must be really important for him to come talk to me, not in a bad way. Because he looks at me and goes, this never happens. I go, what? That you walk into my office? That was my response. That you walk into my office? He goes, know that you're alone. But for him to walk into my office said, you know what? I'm going to meet you where you're at. Because I'm not going to, it's like going to the principal's office if you go to the AD's office. My first couple of years going to my AD at Concordia after my experience in Utah with my head coach, I was terrified of him. Now I was a really young head coach and those type of things, but and then at the end, I ended up becoming the assistant AD and working beside him, walk into their office, right? It's kind of like when I walk around campus here, I get way closer to them and they'll come to me when I go into their classroom, when I go talk to them at lunch, when I check on them in the hallway, right? Because then they go, hey, they're a human too, right? To be honest, that's one of the reasons I talk about stupid things. Like, well, I literally talk about Legos or things that are irrelevant, because the kids will put their guard down and say, hey, she's a safe person, right? And so that's why I watch TV shows that most adults should not watch, but I need to know what's going on with 21-year-olds, right? And so I literally will ask kids, what do you watch on TV? That was a recruiting question. And they're like, why do you care? I go, if you can't talk about TV in my program, we're screwed. Because that's all my team talked about. So you need to be able to de-escalate the tension for them.
And coach, on that real quick, just a little bit of a follow-up to it. Seems like so much what you're talking about is proactive relationship building and communication. And sometimes we just get so busy with what we're doing that, those one-on-one meetings, those things are the first things that kind of we push to the side. But what you're saying and what I'm hearing throughout the conversation today is that not only is that super important for your staff member or your coach, it's equally, if maybe not even more important for you, because you're really going to get out ahead of some of the things that cause you mental anguish through the process as well. Is that, am I hearing you right on that?
That's 100% correct, right? I think about a night that I had a coach call that would have never called me the year before. And we had a major situation going on and we got it rectified in 45 minutes. And we are not in the same time zone. And I said to another department, I go, yeah, we had a kid that was in serious crisis and we got it fixed in 45 minutes. They're like, are you serious? I go, how do you do that? I go, well, I'm good. I have great relationship with both parties and with the athletes. So when I pull them, when everybody has a crisis, they always know, well, we're prepared for this. I know what to do, and I'm going to do these things. One of the reasons I can say anything, honestly, like some of you guys that listen to me speak are like, what speaker says this crap, right? But it's usually because I build relationships even with my audience, so I can get away with bloody murder, right? So I know, like my ADs that I talk to now, I'll be like, okay, dude, we got to get rid of coach. I literally said that to a coach the other day. I go, hey, I've got a coach to replace your softball coach. He goes, well, I've got to offload this one first. This is not an NAIA person, so nobody is one of these people. And I go, coach, I just said to the AD, I go, hey, I have somebody when you're ready, because I know she's your style, right? And so that's the thing. It's like, we're going to prevent some stuff from happening when I know they're going to let a coach go.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
Or, and a lot of it's because we have the relationship, we can have those hard, crazy conversations. Right. And that's what's important. You don't want, and I say, you never want to sideswipe somebody. And you know what? You want your coaches to feel that way too. My promise to my boss was always like, you're never going to go into a meeting surprise. You will always know as much as I do. I don't want somebody to ask a question that you're not aware of. Because honestly, explain to your coaches that you don't know what you don't know. And that's why it's important to come and say, hey, this is going on. right?
Right.
Good ADs aren't going to try and take over and micromanage. They're going to say, how do I support you through this? Right. And I had a captain say that to me one time. I go, well, do you want me to just take care of this for you? This is when I was a young student coach. She goes, no, cause I just need guidance and I'm going to go have the conversation on my own. And I was like, that's exactly what we want. Right.
Coach,
Yes. The proactive, the relationships. And here's the thing is you get so busy.
yeah.
When you block those one-on-ones, they stay in your schedule. They don't get deleted.
Mm-hmm.
When you need 20 minutes to go check in on somebody, it doesn't matter. Like, hey, I'm just going to run down the training room this 20 minutes to check and make sure my trainers aren't losing it. Because here's the thing, like right now, holidays is one of the hardest times. Should be your eternal time of checking in and making sure athletes know, hey, we're here for you even when you leave. And for all the international that don't get to leave, it's even harder. Because sometimes kids going home for Christmas is one of the hardest times of year because they don't want to be at home, right? But just, going into a team room and say, hey, I know that freaking holidays are hard. We're here for you, even when you go home. Those things are huge, and they're going to prevent a lot of hiding in secrets in your department.
Well, Coach, that's a great message to end on here during the holiday season. And we really appreciate your time and the timely message. Super, super important for us as we all get into our holiday season and as we continue to navigate the environment that we're in. As a reminder to everyone, a big thank you to NACDA and the NAIA-ADA and all of you as members. This is a membership benefit for all of you, and we appreciate you being members and a part of this great group. So I hope you all have a really, really good holiday season, and I hope you were able to take something away from this message. And Coach, we certainly appreciate your time today.
You're welcome. And just a heads up, I'm actually, starting a partnership with the NEI. So I'm accessible when people need me, right? So if you're like, hey, yeah, we want you to come work with us, you can always grab us, right? And I know that Chesney, we put a list together of saying, hey, of price points of things and services that we offer. So if you have any questions or need support, you can always just grab me.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you for that news. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great holiday season, and we'll see you around soon.